How is everything going down in Orlando, and how's this week of training been ahead of Sunday night's game?
Um, it's been good. I think we've gotten settled in. Uh, the the training's been good. Everything's been fine pretty much. There's been a couple of little weather delays here and there, but outside of that, everything's been um pretty easy. Guys have dealt with everything, back and forth to the fields and all the other stuff that goes with it in a good way. And I think we're just anxious now to play a game.
Peter, what would you say is one big takeaway that you've seen thus far from the few games that haven't played?
From the few games that have played,
Yes.
uh I actually think the fitness level of most of the teams has been pretty good for about somewhere between 60 and 75 minutes. Um, Probably the two Florida teams were fitter than anyone else up into this point, just because I think weather and everything else. Uh, and I would say that teams are probably a little more sharper than I would have expected, and that's probably good for the viewership.
Peter, do you think the fact that you had so much heat and humidity here in Kansas City uh, prepared your team for what they're going to face in Orlando?
Um, yeah, I would say that the last couple weeks were of a good temperature and humidity in the morning, so it helped us. I would think a little bit, yeah. And and training here though as well is it wasn't just a complete shock and a shot to the mouth for us. It was more of just us kind of because I lived here for and played here for a year as a player. I know what it's like, and I lived in Tampa and played in Tampa, and it can be brutal, but I think I think the weather in Kansas City helped a little bit, but it's still going to be different once game time starts, just because I think an MLS game is so different than playing um, inter squad scrimmages. It's just so different. So I think for us and for the other team, the first 20 minutes is going to be interesting.
Peter, can I just ask, what's a normal day like for you just now in the bubble, from when you get up to when you go to bed? What's it kind of like for you?
For me personally,
Yeah.
get up at 4:45. Usually go swimming in the pool. Nobody's around. It's great. Um, Come back. Usually do some type of lift workout, and then we have breakfast. We take the early time slot training, which is 8 o'clock. We get on the bus around 7. Players are already eating breakfast between 6 and 7:30. So is staff. Get out to the training at 7:20. Set up the field, and then start practice. Usually practice is somewhere between an hour and a half long. Load up, come back. We got a small little snack. Uh, Usually lunch at 12:30, 1 o'clock. Depending on the day, if we have a weight session, then the team's got a weight session in the afternoon. Uh, I usually have a meeting with the staff a little bit later in the day. We've actually went out to a couple of restaurants the last couple of nights, which broke up there's a little monotony every day. You're going into a ballroom and getting, a buffet. So going into the restaurants has been good. Almost feels a little normal, if you will, not like you're in a bubble. And then, whether I'm looking at some video or just kind of finalizing the game prep PowerPoint, and that's really about it. And then let's go again the next day.
Peter, this is John Siegel from MLSsoccer.com. Thanks for doing this. Minnesota, of course, will be without Aiko Para, which is perhaps an opportunity you all can capitalize on. How do you envision that changing the complexion of this game, knowing Minnesota will be without the defending MLS Player of the Year or MLS Defender of the Year?
Yeah, look, Ike's a good player. Obviously, he was here for a long time. I'm sure they'll miss him, but it's the same thing with all of us. We always have players that are out, and we all have to deal with it. They have a solid team. I've said this before, from front to back, especially up the spine. They have a solid team defensively. They have a lot of improvisation going forward, and I still think it'll be a very, very difficult game. It was two of probably the more informed teams to start the season off. So, there's probably a good chance that I feel comfortable saying that they'll probably be in the same place they were when we left. And so I look forward to being a good game.
Peter, I apologize. I didn't see yesterday's matches, so I don't know if there were any demonstrations done before them. But in the opener, there was an orchestrated demonstration with the guys with the hands in the air and taking a knee. I'm curious, number one, was that something that was league-wide? Did you know that was coming? And number two, do you have anything planned with your team before your match?
I did know. It was orchestrated by the players. Obviously, they did it in concert with all the teams in the league. And I believe that you'll probably see something every game. Every team is incredibly supportive of all the demonstrations and what's trying to be achieved. So I would say yes to all. I would not want to speak on behalf of our guys because it would be maybe out of place for me to do. But I think we have guys that have been the ones who have been the leaders in that area, in that space. And so I've kind of taken their lead and listened to them, and we've kind of worked through some things. And yeah, there'll be something on Sunday as well.
Coach, going back to health of roster, and I know you just talked about Ike Opara being out for Minnesota. How's the health of your roster now that there have been a few days to train down in Orlando? Is everybody available up to this point ahead of Sunday?
Yeah, everybody's looking pretty good. I would say, interestingly enough, I think that, Johnny Russell's close to being ready. Johnny's put a lot of work in. So he's looking pretty good. Everybody else is, in a good place at the moment. I really think everybody's just chomping at the bit to play a game. So it's really, we're now at the point where we finished I would say our preparation practices for the most part up until now. Tomorrow's a little bit of a really tapering down day. And so the guys will be, I think, really ready to go come tomorrow, right after training, just kind of getting themselves in their headspace, and getting themselves, into the mode of getting ready for a game. It's something they haven't done for quite a few months now. And so outside of the, the game prep and all that stuff and video and all that, these guys they just want to play a game. And so does the staff. Everybody's dying. So we're ready to go.
Peter, when you have that sort of anxiety to get on the pitch and get ready, how do you get everybody to calm down and just play and execute?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's probably what my biggest concern is that not coming out of the gates too fast, if you will, and then expending a lot of energy early on. I keep telling the guys we're just going to have to be patient. Game's going to be 90 minutes. Realize that we have subs, but at the same time, you just can't go out and just expend all your energy, because 5 subs, even though it's half, basically half the players in the field, you still can wear yourself out pretty quickly. And it depends on how the game goes too, right? If we're under pressure a lot and we're having to defend a lot, then we could wind up expending a lot of energy. So we gotta keep our heads. We just got to be focused and concentrated when the game starts, not to give anything silly away, but we also have to find our rhythm in the game. And I'm hoping that's going to be through some valuable possession in the game.
Peter, can you give us a clue maybe to what sort of starting lineup we'll see, with it being the first game back? Any of the young guys are going to be getting some game time?
Yeah, it's a great question, but no. Well, it's one thing. Yeah, I don't talk about lineups. Yeah, sorry, but just something I don't share with media.
Fair.
I'm
Peter,
curious.
Peter, you had Dallas and Nashville obviously withdraw from the tournament. What was the reaction like? It's obviously not a positive. Was it the team down? Anyone hanging their heads? What was the conversation like when that news came around?
You mean with our own team?
Yeah, and maybe just the mood of everybody around there. Was it deflating?
Yeah, I think the best way that I can say it is that I don't think anybody wanted to see anybody, have to leave and go home for sure. But, it's kind of one of those things. It's okay. Unfortunately, this has happened, but we got to move on, and everybody has. And, it's interesting. The groups now are actually, 4 teams in each group now. It's pretty interesting. Way maybe it was intended to be from the beginning. Who knows? But I think everybody's moved on. Everybody was probably a little concerned, maybe a little bit in the beginning, not sure how everything was going to be handled. But obviously the league did a really good job with the way that they've quarantined people and off to different parts of the hotel. I haven't seen it, but I know that they're doing it, and they've assured us. And so, but at the same time, the players have all dealt with it in a good way. And, I think everybody, and including the staff, I think all of us, what happens is that you're kind of in the hotel and spend a lot of time in your room, and, each guy has his own room, and everybody's kind of in there most of the day, other than when you go out for practice, or if you go out for a meal, or if you go out for a weight session. But, right after that, you're right back in your room, basically. And so it seems like when you're either in the weight room or the field, it's kind of your release. It's where you feel normal again. And so I think everybody likes going out at that time, which I'm not sure if all the guys really enjoy. We're back in Kansas City going to practice all day long, but, over here, it's actually pretty welcome.
Coach, I would imagine that you don't really get to be around the league in its entirety very often. What's it been like running into other coaches, players that you have connections with just over the last 25 years of the league and your career as well?
Yeah, it's actually a good question. Unfortunately, you wind up not spending a lot of time talking to people just because you're trying to be socially distanced and responsible. But, I've ran into so many different players, just a moment ago coming down here, Sesanovic, Teal Bunbury, I've ran into Kai Kamara, just so many different players, Alec Khan, Atlanta, so you see everybody, and then obviously all the coaches and the GMs. But, everybody's a little bit, I would say it this way, everybody's probably really responsible, which is good. They're trying to keep themselves more connected to their own team. You really see everybody kind of when you're going in at the lobby. The lobby's huge, so that's not a bad thing. And then actually when we're walking out to the fields, you kind of pass by people. But it's not as if we're sitting around having dinner together. It just doesn't happen. It's kind of more of just a hello and how's everything going? Yeah, good to hear it. Great. Okay, see you later, and you move on. But I don't know. Sometimes I say it seems a little bit like a club, like club soccer, high-end tournament at times, until obviously you get with the players, because they're obviously of a different level, because we're all in the same hotel and the same floor, different floors, whatever. And it's all soccer people. And that's kind of the feel it has a little bit.
Well, certainly before Nashville, some of the other teams were out. They were shooting pool possibly in the hotel. They were out playing golf, which was not on one of the properties. You just said the players are going from meals to working out to training and basically back to the room. Has it gotten a little bit tighter in light of the second team dropping out? And are you finding this to be a bit of, because everyone's sort of forced together, a bit of a bonding experience for the players?
No, I don't know if it's I think the protocols are the same that were in place. I think that most are just adhering to them probably a lot more than they probably would have when they first came in and not knowing what to expect. Because I think it's kind of like in our cities where, when the quarantine first started, everybody was kind of like, what is this? then all of a sudden it started to get real, and everybody really started to stay home and really tried to, follow the protocol. And then all of a sudden, I think everybody started getting tired of it, and country started to open up and cities started to open up. And so people were a little bit more loose. And then we found out we were coming here, and then we thought, hey, we're coming into a bubble. And I think guys thought in the beginning, and I remember we weren't here early on, but thought, hey, we're going to a bubble so you can be a lot more relaxed. And I think maybe that's probably what hurt maybe some of the teams when they first came in. But I think what's happened since those two teams have gone out, I think everybody's kind of hunkered down and really are following the protocol from a responsibility point of view. That's the biggest thing.
Peter, has this experience, what's it done for you and your confidence of getting through an entire season, getting through the rest of the season? Your sport, every sport, of being able to try to, pull this off and keep everybody healthy and actually be able to get a season in.
I've said this before. I never expected that you were going to come here or anywhere else and that nobody was going to get the virus, right? I expected it would happen. I think the big thing is what is your protocol thereafter? What's the process in which you're able to then move on and try to minimize the number of people and all that kind of stuff. And, I think a lot of times it comes down to the responsibility of the individual, then the team, the organization. And I think the league is on the back end of all that. So what I actually feel is that, I thought our guys did a really good job when we were in Kansas City. I can't speak for all the other teams in their markets, but I thought our guys did a really good job there for the most part. And so I expect that once we get out of this, we'll probably have learned a lot for sure. And then going back to our markets, I'm hoping that, I know some things in some areas have not been the best, but hopefully that's going to change. And, and I think we're going to keep having change. I fully expect, I've said this before, that we're going to come back and we're going to play games, and it'll be in front of some fans. How many, I don't know, but I think we will back in Kansas City. And I know that all of us want to do it. All the players, they talk about it. They ask me all the time, have you heard anything on what the schedule looks like coming out and all that stuff? So they're not asking because they don't want to do it. They're asking because they do. We want to continue on playing after this because I think a lot of work's been put in by a lot of different, whether it's players, staff members, whatever. It's been a lot of work put in, and everybody's ready to go. And this is what we do for a living. So, it's just different, right? We want to get out there and go and do it, and we think we can, and we'll find a way. So, yeah, I think we're just excited to play these games and then get back to Kansas City and keep the season going.
I was on a call with the Whitecaps a couple of days ago, and they mentioned that they've turned their floor into a little bit of Canada, a little bit of British Columbia with flags and stuff. Have you guys done anything to remind you a little bit of home in your floor?
Yeah, no, we don't have any barbecue sauce out or, yeah, no, we don't. I think again, I guess I'll say this from a serious point of view. I think the guys have done a good job of trying to keep themselves, as much as they can, separate of each other, just kind of getting ready for the games. And like I said, I mean, you got to understand, like the environment isn't one of, congregating. It just isn't. It's more of just, hey, do your thing, get back to your room, do your thing, get back to your room type of thing. And that's really what the cycle of the day is. And, I know there could be a lot of other things that are more difficult to do. It's just, it can be at times. I mean, I'm easy to say. It can be at times a little lonely. And it'll be interesting to see when we're, 3 weeks into this, 4 weeks into this, we'll see how that goes.
Is there any reaching out to Philadelphia or New York to see what the early game was like and what that kickoff was like and kind of preparing your team for the early kickoff?
I haven't yet. Although we're training right now at 8:00 in the morning. And I think our guys actually like it. The other night we trained at 7, something like that. And I actually think that we were more lively in the morning session than we were at the 7. And I don't know if that's because you're sitting around all day. I'm not really too sure which one it is, but I just think that I don't think that 8:00 game will be as bad as, or I'm sorry, the 9:00 game, 8:00 KC time. But I don't know how difficult it'll be at this moment after seeing that game, because I thought both teams handled it really well.
Feeling like the European leagues, we've got the water breaks either side of half time, and we have seen them have an effect on the game. Why do you think that is exactly, and how do you approach that water break? Is it like a mini half time? What's it look like for you?
Best way to make the analogy, it's like a timeout in basketball. I actually think it can be really valuable. But I think the one thing is that when you come out of it, you got to be turned on right away, because you can drop your concentration for just a moment. Because you got to think about it, the guys are revved up, right? They're revved up for like 25 to 30 minutes, and then all of a sudden there's a stoppage, and now they can relax, and now they go back out. And if they're not turned on right away, these teams are good enough to capitalize on one play. And so you got to get turned back on really, really quickly. I do think the water breaks are really good because it helps to, first off, the guys need to replenish, some fluids, but I think it just also helps the way the game looks on TV, the way the guys are able to perform, because it's a nightmare if they can't get something to drink just because the game is going back and forth.
And going forward in the future, would you maybe like to see some sort of implementation of maybe only like one timeout per team over a game or something like that to make the game more dynamic maybe?
No, I'm good with the way our game is. I think prior to all this, the way our game was and 3 substitutions and all that stuff, I think it was good. I think there always can be a little bit of change here or there. I think one of the things you always have to take in consideration is guys with head injuries, like a head injury where a player actually has to come out. That maybe is something I've always said that needed to be looked at, because I think sometimes there's this need to hurry up to make an assessment on a player who may have had let's just say he had a collision with another player head-wise. I just think it would make sense to, if you already used your 3 subs and, you couldn't do something, that player, maybe at that moment you could use a 4th sub, in that case, but it would only have to do based on the doctor's decision. It wouldn't be a coaching decision. But, outside of that, I think I like the game the way it was, because I think one of the things about soccer is that it's not one, it's probably 2 things. One is you have to be fit. You got to be fit to play this game for 90 minutes. It's not easy. The other is that your preparation and your decisions have to be made, within that 45 minutes. You got a halftime to be able to make some adjustments, and the other next 45 minutes, the guy's got to be able to, make the other adjustments and do them within the game. And I think that's it's still about players, and I think that should remain. I think it becomes too much of a coach's game at that point if you have too many timeouts and stoppages where now the coach can have so much of an impact. I just think it's a player's game.